What up, everyone? This is Brenton.
And Jenna.
This podcast is all about connecting with our Autumn family in a fun and different kind of way.
So turn down that CB, buckle up, and enjoy the show. It's going to be truckin' awesome.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on the Autumn Transport Podcast. As always, my name is Brenton. I'm one of the freight managers here at Autumn. We don't have Jenna with us today, unfortunately, so you won't be able to enjoy Jenna's side conversations and laughs, but hopefully Dean, Croke, and I can keep you entertained and pass along some helpful, useful information. Today, we're going to be talking a lot about sleep and rest and how important those things are to truck drivers, something that we probably don't talk enough about, but is very important from a safety perspective out on the road. And Dean he's an expert in that industry. And so I asked him to join me today on the podcast. Dean, thanks for taking time out of your day.
It's great to be with you on this very important subject. Looking forward to our discussion.
So you're in Boston, is that correct?
Yeah, we live in Manchester by the Sea. So we're in a sleepy little beach town up here, about 20 miles north east of Boston Airport. We've been here for 23 years since we moved from Australia. It's been home the entire time, but we grew up on a beach in Australia, so we kind of gravitated towards the closest beach we could get here in New England.
Well, not a lot of the drivers probably know this, but I'm pretty unashamedly a Boston fan. I've been in Minnesota my whole life, but I say that I was misplaced at birth because I was meant to be in Boston. I'm a big Red Sox fan, Patriots fan, Celtics fan, all the sports, and I've been out there 3 or 4 times to visit, and just it's an amazing city.
You know, normally when I say I'm from Boston and start talking sports, people kind of get a little bit antsy because they don't like, they don't like the Patriots or they don't like the Red Sox or they can't stand the Bruins. And
right.
I mean, in the 23 years, Brent, this has just been an amazing place to live from a sports fan perspective.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. Like, I've been to some hockey games and, haven't been to a Patriots game. I'd love to go to one of those. And I haven't seen a Celtics game, but you see it all on TV and you kind of live and breathe it here. Everybody's always talking about it. My boys I got 2 boys that are sort of 21 and 23, and they are just sports fanatics.
Yes.
And it fills such a big part of their lives, which is good. I think it's healthy. So yeah, I just love it here. I think we've been through the disappointments of the Bruins and the Celtics. I was driving my other son he moved to Lake Tahoe. We did the 3,000-mile trip cross country 3 weeks ago. We were driving across the Salt Lake Flats at Bonneville. And I said, do you want to pull in? Like we had his big 4-wheel drive Jeep. So do you want to pull in and drive out on the Salt Lake?
Yeah.
And there's like hundreds of people out there. And at that point, Bruins were losing against the Hurricanes? Who was it they were losing against in that playoff series?
The Panthers this year.
Panthers. They were losing in the Panthers, and we were so angry. We just drove straight past the Salt Lake Flat. Like he was yelling, and he was so angry with it. It was like one of those lifetime moments I'll never forget where we were when that happened.
Yes. Yeah. I was in Colorado a couple of weeks ago on a little vacation, and I went to the Colorado Rockies baseball game. And they were playing the New York Mets, and there was quite a few Mets fans in the audience there. And there was this one moment where the crowd kind of got quiet, and everyone was checking their phones because it was coming down to the final seconds of the Miami Heat Boston Celtics game. And this group of New York fans behind me, I heard him say, "Anybody but the Celtics. Anybody but the Celtics." And then the Celtics hit that winning shot, and you just heard them say, "Oh man, no!"
Yeah.
So,
my first experience to the rivalry was New York Yankees and Red Sox. We went to a game one night, and we didn't know any better. But the the rivalry bordering on hatred between the two is amazing. The things they say to each other, like the fans, is like gobsmacking. But then they put it on T-shirts. Yeah. And they'll print it on T-shirts and sell them outside. Like, just the awful things they say about each other. Yeah. I think it's all in good fun, but man, it's an intense rivalry.
Well, you were you said you're from Australia, so rugby had to be a thing there, and you probably had some rivalries there between teams.
Yeah. I played professionally for a few years in my younger years. We grew up playing rugby, and in fact, the Northern Hemisphere rugby season is just finishing up here with the European, the Heineken Cup and the Gallagher Cup finishing up in England. I watch those every weekend. And the Southern Hemisphere rugby season is just starting up with Super Rugby.
Okay.
So I'm a huge rugby fan. I absolutely love the 15s. I'm not much of a fan for the 7s, but I love the 15s. It's a really interesting sport. What you don't know, if you haven't played it at a high level, there's what we call an old boys network. And it's different to a lot of sports, but there is a rugby network of people around the world that are linked by rugby. Like, they are business people in all walks of life in a variety of positions, but there's a very tight network. So when I first moved here, my friend in Australia said, we'll call, I used to coach his rugby team here in Boston Old Gold. Okay. And so this is the old boys network of people know all over the world. And I just met him, never knew him, didn't know anything about him, and he drove us around and helped us find a house. And and that story has been repeated year after it. Doesn't matter where I travel in the world, there's always someone from the rugby network that you can connect with if you need anything. Yeah. It's just amazing. The old boys network is very powerful in rugby.
Well, I know there's a network in trucking too, and truckers love to talk and take care of each other. Yeah. And you were a former truck driver before, so you're currently working as for DAT and Freight and Analytics as a principal analyst. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm a market analyst here at DAT. I've been here for 3 years. I was at Freightwaves before that as Chief Insight Officer. And I spent probably 17, 18 years working in telematics data, working for companies like Qualcomm and Spirion, working on ways to use data to make drivers' lives better. Okay. And, that's kind of a segue into our topic today. Part of that was using, I'll call it ELD data, but using ELD data to predict which schedules were the highest risk from a driver's sleep deprivation fatigue perspective. So we built a lot of good models around that, and we could stack rank all the drivers from most at risk of a single vehicle accident to least at risk of a single vehicle accident based on the schedules they drove, which might sound crazy and counterintuitive, but human sleep is probably the easiest thing on the planet to predict because there's not many inputs. It's like sun up and sun down. Sure. And a bit of coffee here and there. Yeah. So, we've evolved to go to bed when the sun goes down, and we get up when the sun comes up, and blue light is the light that really resets our sleep-wake cycle every day. So when you look at a driver's work schedule from their ELD data feed, you can predict on their off-duty periods how much sleep they'll get. Okay. With a high degree of accuracy.
Interesting.
And when you do that, you can figure out which drivers you need to get more sleep with, or pay them some layover pay, put them in a hotel because they've had 5 or 6 nights on the road. And if you do this every day, you get ahead of the inevitable accident curve. Because with single vehicle accidents, they don't happen very often, but when they do, they are generally pretty bad. Yeah. And they're bad because, especially, it's a random event. Like when you're not driving the vehicle because your eyes are shut, whatever you're going to hit, you're going to hit. It's a random outcome.
Sure.
Like, so it depends. It could be a busload of people, it could be a bridge abutment, or it just could be a guardrail. Or you could just drift off into the median in the winter and you see the snow, the tracks in the snow, and you pay $800 to a wrecker to pull you back out. So it's when you fall asleep at the wheel, it's a random event. Yeah. Whereas with distraction and skill issues, you're always trying to minimize damage at the point of impact. Because it's like, oh, heck, I've made a mistake, and you try to avoid impact. Yeah. Whereas when you're sound asleep, you're not doing anything. You're just going to hit whatever's in front of you. So I figured out a way to actually do this with our company, and we took ELD feeds over the cloud from the ECM and put it into a model, and we could score every hour which drivers really needed to, pull up and have a rest and go to bed, and which ones, were better suited to certain schedules, even down to which customers had the highest risk schedules for drivers. Yeah. So there's I spent a lot of time in data, and why I was able to do that, I've done over 2 million miles as an over-the-road driver, and fell asleep for a living. I fell asleep every single night. So I consider myself an expert on falling asleep at the wheel, which is a ridiculous thing to say because just luck that I'm here. I sort of joke that the only reason I survived is when you fall asleep at the wheel in the outback of Australia, there's nothing to hit.
Except kangaroos.
Yeah, I mean, you hit half a dozen of those every night anyway, but running off the road is not a catastrophic experience. Where I was driving anyway. So, but I lost 2 drivers. So this way to why I came to this country. I'd lost a couple of drivers. They fell asleep on my watch. So I was the, owner manager of the company, and I was the ops manager, and they were compliant with their logs, but sound asleep at the wheel. And one of the themes I push with carriers is you can be 100% compliant with hours of service and sound asleep at the wheel at the same time. Don't be fooled that compliance equals safety. It doesn't. There's no strong connection between the two. And whenever you have to go to a spouse and kids and deliver the tragic news, it will change your life forever. Yeah. And I kind of got out of trucking then in the late 90s or mid 90s, and happened to be speaking at an international conference on fatigue in transportation, where there were all of these academics, sleep science academics from all over the world. Some of the best minds on human physiology and sleep were in Perth, Australia. And by chance, a Harvard professor was speaking after me. And he heard what I had to say, and he said, would you come to America and run my consulting business here in Lexington, Mass? And that was late 1999, and we've been here ever since. Wow. And I'd always wanted to come to the States. It was a perfect opportunity, and I really wanted to stop doing what I was doing because it was wild, wild west stuff back then. Sure. No different here in sort of those 80s and 90s period. But we were doing some crazy stuff, and I knew that, my days were numbered if I didn't change what I was doing. So I ended up coming over here and studying human physiology at Harvard. So when you put together the science of human physiology and how and why we sleep with, decades of falling asleep at the wheel, you can actually come up with solutions that work for truckers. So I designed a sleep education program for truck drivers. So, because once you understand how to sleep, you can then take that knowledge and adapt it to all of your 10-hour breaks, no matter when they occur during the day or night and on weekends. But I always made sure that whenever we did it with big fleets like, Dayton Freight Lines, Dupre Logistics, Praxair, some of my big accounts that I've worked with and taught all of their drivers how to sleep, is making sure that the spouse is involved. Like a critical component for your company would be if you said, what should we do? And I would say make sure the home is involved in the training or in the education, because the home controls the driver's sleep schedule, whether it be at night, during the day, or weekends.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? I've heard you say that before too, that it's not good enough just to teach this stuff to the drivers, but that their families need to know about that too. What ways do you see the home controlling the sleep cycle?
A lot of drivers will trade off having a nap on a Saturday with all the honeydews they've got to do, right? Okay. So they will trade off being called lazy, so that they'll trade off a nap and rather than be called lazy. Because a lot of people still think sleep is a sign of laziness. Yes. But if you're a truck driver and you need an hour and a half nap on Saturday afternoon, that to you is going to be life-saving. But if you skip it because of you want to avoid conflict at home, you'll end up with what we call cumulative fatigue, where that loss of sleep becomes cumulative the next week and the week after and the week after. It's different than the fatigue feeling of 5 a.m, I can't stay awake. This is an incremental change in how you feel. It wears you out over time. Sure. Because human brain needs, if you need 8 hours sleep a night and you get 6, you've got a debt of 2. Mm-hmm. Right? So by the time you get to the end of the week, you could have a sleep debt of 10 hours. And the best example I'll give you is if you've got teenage children, they are most likely wanting to have a sleep marathon on the weekends.
Yeah, I do have teenage children, and they do have those sleep marathons.
Yeah. And what I say to parents, this is why the parents are important, never wake a sleeping teenager. Never. Because what's happened is when children become, and this is really important because we're in the 100 deadly days of summer from Memorial to Labor Day, right? And this is when teenage driving and accident fatalities go through the roof. What happens when you hit puberty is your sleep gate doesn't open until 3 hours later. So in puberty, if you used to go to bed at 9 p.m. as, say, a 10-year-old, after puberty, it'll be midnight. Sleep is delayed about 3 hours during puberty. But the school bus is still going to come at 7 a.m. And what happens is they'll lose sleep. And at best, teenagers are probably getting 4.5 to 6 hours sleep a night at best. Now, their sleep efficiency is very good. They're very good at sleeping when they put their head down. It's very restorative. But if you think this logic through to why they have a sleep marathon, and this applies exactly to truck drivers, and why I say to fleets, make sure drivers get 2 periods of night sleep every 7. Here's why. If you're a teenager and you go to bed at midnight and get up at sleep, but you really need 10, you've got a sleep debt of 4.
Okay.
And if you do that 5 nights a week, it's 20 hours of sleep debt in your brain on Saturday, and that's why they want this sleep marathon. Now, you don't need 20 extra hours to repay the debt. You only need 2 periods of night sleep back to back. That's all you need. The brain is incredible when you have this sleep deprivation build-up period. You can be awake all week, and in 2 nights, you're back to normal. And that's why, if you think back to the 34-hour reset that was designed and changed a few years ago, remember it had to span 2 periods of night between 1 and 5 a.m.?
Yes.
Now you know why. Because what we were trying to do from a science perspective is make sure the driver's got 2 periods of night sleep over the 34-hour reset. The problem now is that a 34-hour reset may only give you 1 period of night sleep. Now, if you need 2 periods of night sleep to dispense the sleep debt and you're now only getting 1, chances are if you had a 10-hour sleep debt and only got rid of 5, just talking theoretically, that 5 starts on Monday morning, and then it's 15,
sure.
and then it's accumulates over a period of time, and that's why, in my opinion, turnover rates spike at around the 90-day mark. Because when you take a new hire who's been sleeping at night all of their lives, and suddenly they've got this roller coaster ride of schedules and sleep deprivation, it takes about 90 days to turn them into a mess. And they will become frustrated because lack of sleep changes your ability to make good decisions. You can't concentrate, you've got poor memory, you've got depression symptoms, you're moody, sometimes aggressive, you're late, a little bit obstinate. I always say to people, we all behave like 2-year-olds without sleep.
Yeah.
It's probably the most important thing you've got to teach your drivers. So getting back to the family, you've got to be able to educate the family on all of the sleep science and how do you sleep in cycles and napping. And then when you say to a spouse, your husband needs an hour and a half at 3 p.m. on Saturday so that when he goes to work on Monday, he has a lower chance of falling asleep at the wheel. And unless you can connect the dots, because when you describe to a family what driving is like and what falling asleep is like, and the spouse is there, because you will always see the dig in the ribs and someone will say, do you do that? Do you fall asleep at the wheel? And that's when you get the connection, because the extreme is don't plan any social events around when the driver needs to sleep, because they do it. We do it all the time. Like you will have sport. I think about all the sporting events in Minnesota. Like my boys, we'd have them at the hockey rink at 5 a.m.
Right.
We wonder why they can't put a decent shift together.
Yeah.
So we've got it all backwards when it comes to this. And I talk a lot about biocompatible scheduling, which is in your tanker business, imagine designing all of your trips and schedules around the driver's preferred sleep pattern rather than arbitrarily saying we start work at 6 every day.
Yeah.
Because for some drivers, that's not fun. They'd rather come in at 10.
Yeah, and I've heard you talk about the fact that drivers, their schedules change sometimes every day. They may have a 6 a.m. pickup one day and then a 9 p.m. pickup and then a 2 a.m. pickup. And so their body isn't getting any sort of a sleep rhythm.
Well, it's called social jet lag, right? You just can't adapt to that changing sleep pattern quickly enough.
Before I got into trucking, I worked in retail management. 1 4 or 5 month period there, I was working overnights. And so I would work 4 overnights in a row, and then I'd have 4 days off in a row. So my sleep schedule was constantly flipping. And kind of like a driver who's been out on the road for 2 or 3 weeks and then finally home, as soon as I was home and not working, it was like cram everything I can into that period of time that I've been missing. And I definitely felt that sleep debt that was never getting repaid.
And you get unhealthy. Like if you're getting less than 6 hours sleep, you start to suffer from a raft of, health problems. We don't have time to go into them all today, but this is sort of why regulations change. You think about the hours of service, it was like from 1936 till 2004, never changed, right? The hours of service, I think it was 56, anyway, long time. And in 2004, and to give you an idea of that flip-flopping and why the 10 on, 8 off was so dangerous, because it's exactly what you were describing with the flip-flopping and the changing in start times. Because with the 10 on, 8 off in the pre-hours of service regulation, your work day would start 6 hours earlier every day. Because at the 18-hour mark, after 8 hours off, you'd start a new 10-hour shift.
Oh, yep.
But it also meant that sleep had to occur 6 hours earlier every day.
Yeah.
And that's what we call social jet lag, because you cannot fly to London and go to bed earlier, right? You could fly to Los Angeles from Boston and go to bed, later, because you're designed to go to bed later, not earlier. So it was a really, really dangerous hours of service regime. And what they tried to change in 2004 successfully was the 11, 10 and 3, 11 on, 10 off, 3 other. It equaled 24 hours rather than an 18-hour workday. It became a 24-hour workday, which is coincidentally about the same time the sun rises each day.
Okay.
That was the reason for the change in 2004. I'd hosted the FMCSA and the DOT in Australia in the late 90s and showed them how we did this. Our listeners will love this. We didn't have logbooks. We had a driver's diary, an honor system where you wrote down everything. And you would not believe how well rested drivers are when you can allow sleep to occur when they're tired and driving to occur when they're awake. It was what the benefits of paper logs were. They afforded you this flexibility. And if we could get the flexibility of paper logs in the ELD mandate, you would find that drivers would be much happier. I put a consortium of carriers together in 2005 called the Hours of Sleep program, a deliberate play on words. Because what I wanted drivers to be able to do was put the 11 and the 10 together however they wanted. So, drive 2, sleep 4, drive 1, sleep half, drive 8.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, that's 11 and 10, because that's how the human body works. You're good some days, other days you're not. Sometimes you can go for a few hours, other times you're in and out of a truck stop every hour. Every day is different. And if you allow that flexibility, what happens is you get more miles and they're safer, because everyone will tell you that well-rested drivers run more miles. They're happier, they're healthier, they're more contented. Absent sleep, it's a grind. It's really hard. Mental health is such an underestimated part of this industry because you have a lot of time on your own. But with lack of sleep, it's really, really hard on the human brain. It's hard on truck drivers to be out there all the time on their own when they're sleep deprived, because you just never feel good. You always feel like there's something not quite right. And you've got this sort of dull ache behind your eyeballs. Yeah. And, you can't concentrate and you're always forgetting things and you're having to ask people to repeat the same instructions all the time. And you have to really slow down when you get to a customer's location. Because what experienced drivers do when they get really tired is they slow everything down. It's almost slow motion. And you deliberately crawl into the truck stop or into the customer lot. You take more time to compensate because of your reaction times are diminished so much.
Yeah, It's interesting. My trip I mentioned out to Colorado, I drove out there by myself, and I kind of like to do that. Take a long road trip once a year. It kind of helps me connect with the driver mindset a little bit and what that's like for the guys to spend 8, 9, 10 hours a day driving. And when I drove out, it was about a 13-hour drive, and I left right from work on a Friday, and I felt good. I drove through till about 2:30 in the morning, pulled into a rest area, and I've slept for about 3 hours, woke up, finished the drive, and I actually spent the entire next day in Denver and didn't feel fatigued at all.
There you go. Yep.
On the way back, I chose to do a 15-hour push because I just wanted to get home. So I never stopped to sleep or rest at all. And I was pretty wiped out for the next 2 days after going that whole night without any stop, any sleep. So I can see how having that flexibility to stop, sleep for a few hours when you feel like you need it, then go, then stop again and sleep, that listening to your body that way can really be helpful.
Well, that's how I survived as a driver. You know, if you get tired, just pull up and have a sleep. You don't need a logbook or a device on the dash to tell you when to stop and rest. You know, most drivers are smart. They know how they feel. You know, they don't need to be, sort of controlled by this clock that's designed around this theoretical driver that everybody should be like. And we're just not like that. Not every driver is the same. We're all born with a unique body clock at birth. You know, we've got short nappers, long nappers, no nappers. We've got night owls. We've got morning larks. We've got some people with low tolerance to caffeine, some high tolerance to caffeine. You know, but if you're one of the more successful things I did, you know, working with companies on redesigning their schedules was at, Dupre Logistics, where we worked with Al Lacombe and his team down there in their tanker business. And we said, you know, why don't we put, when I was talking about sleep personalities, I said to the guys there, about 15% of the population, are hardwired night owl, and about 15% are hardwired morning larks. And there's about 75% of us, about 70% roughly, are intermediate sleep types, a bit like me. Go to bed at 10, get up at 7, right?
Yeah.
So we said, you know, why wouldn't we put night owls who can stay up till 2 a.m., but, you know, they want to sleep in till 10, why don't we put them on night shift? And why don't we put morning larks on the 4 a.m. start? Because they're going to be in bed at 7. So what we started to do was ask the question during hiring, what's your preferred sleep pattern?
Okay.
And we couldn't get it right all of the time. But what we did is we matched drivers to the schedule. That's what biocompatible scheduling is. Because in your business, you will have some drivers who are just not suited to the schedule you've got them on, and they just tough it out. They're not going to tell you. It's a grind for them. Whereas other drivers love the schedule they're on. So, and that leads us to the other part, and that is consistency in the schedules, because that's probably the one thing everybody's got to be better at, and that's consistent start times. As you would have heard, you know, me speak, if you don't have the same start time every day, by default, you've got a different sleep time every day.
Right.
And that's what does the damage. The human brain has an inbuilt drive for what we call anchor sleep, which is sleep at the same time, same place every day.
Okay.
And if you're a trucker with all of these erratic schedules, you might be hauling auto parts. And sometimes, you know, the auto parts overnight, you know, runs will be, well, you start any time between 8 and midnight. Well, like, there's no way you can get any sleep. And then you're off and you've got to do an overnight run. It's very, very intense. If you don't have a fixed start time, it's very hard to manage the sleep leading up to it. So I always encourage fleets to not only just educate the drivers and their families and their teenage children at home to try and get the home life more cohesive and more accepting of the driver's sleep requirements, but also to work out ways to have, the schedules that are designed by the company more suited to the driver. And I'm not saying they're not compliant. They'll be 100% compliant with the hours of service. It just means that the 10-hour rest break is going to most likely occur when they have the highest chance of sleep, because that's how their body's designed.
Yeah, I do.
But it sounds easy.
I do the schedule planning and the route planning for the guys in the liquid tank division here. And I know that I do have some drivers who have expressed to me, I really like to start early. I like to be running. I'd like to leave at 2, 3 a.m. every day. And I have other drivers who say, well, I want to run all night and sleep the morning away. And I think it takes a lot of communication and balance between your driver and your dispatcher or your freight planner to be willing to have the conversation about what my sleep needs are. And I think it's important then for dispatchers to be respectful of that and cognizant of that, and to try to plan things around what's best for each driver whenever they can.
Yeah, it's critical, I think, because you've got to have, with those drivers that are talking to you are expressing what their desired sleep pattern is, as the opposite of saying, I prefer to drive at these times. What they're really telling you is what their preferred sleep block is. And that's how you build all of your safety metrics into a business. Because safety is not just teaching drivers about, it's not just skills or behavior. What's missing in the whole training program for truckers is the sleep that powers all of that,
right?
That powers the decision making. Why is it that in a tanker business you have mixes and spills on night shift? You put diesel in a gasoline tank. Well, numbers look crazy at night when you're tired on the ground.
Yeah.
So unless you're well rested and, you've got good vision and, you're thinking clearly, you will make mistakes, because in the fog of night, when you're sleep deprived, it is so easy to make bad decisions. They're called accidents and incidents. You don't set out to deliberately do it. It's just that the brain is degraded in terms of its ability to function normally. That's why I always say to fleets, it's a 12-hour day shift, it's a 10-hour night shift. Not all hours are created equal.
Right.
And you've got to back off your expectations in the night. I think the driver's the same, but you've got to back off, because what will happen is the mixes and spills, the contaminations, all those sorts of things come out of trying to squeeze the same amount of work out of a night shift. It's just not how we're designed. We're designed to be in bed at night, and the brain cannot compute that you've had all day off. It could care less, because all it takes into account is the sun is down, it's time to go to bed.
Yeah, I think anybody that is paying attention to their own life will realize, truck driver or not, we don't make as good as decisions at night. Our bodies want to shut down. They want to go to bed. You mentioned earlier in our conversation that one of the things you're passionate about is helping drivers understand how to sleep. Can you talk a little bit more about the actual how behind it, and maybe some of the physiology behind sleep?
So the best example is your 3-hour sleep on the way out to Colorado. You had 3 hours.
Yep.
And am I right in saying you just woke up at the end of 3 hours and felt fine?
I felt really good, yeah.
There you go. Okay. So this is about, you actually had 2 sleep cycles.
Okay,
and
sleep
a sleep cycle is about 90 minutes. Yeah, sleep cycle. So what I try to get drivers to do is measure sleep in cycles, not hours.
Okay.
Because 7 hours is worse than 6. It's not linear. More is not better. And let me describe to you what a sleep cycle is, because this gets to why that 1 hour nap on a Saturday made you feel worse than felt better.
Okay.
So 3 hours is 2 sleep cycles. A sleep cycle is 90 minutes, 90, about an hour and a half. And what happens is you sort of, when you put your head on the pillow, you sort of, you're awake, you think, oh, can I read a book or will I fall asleep? And then you drift off into sleep after about 20 minutes. And then you kind of go into this deep sleep for about 45 minutes. And in deep sleep, your brainwave patterns change. What happens is your brain becomes disconnected from reality. You're kind of dead to the world. You've heard that expression.
Yep.
But in deep sleep, your body's tossing and turning. So if your partner is tossing and turning in bed, they're in deep sleep. Because in deep sleep, human growth hormone gets released into the body, and the body goes into its repair state. Skin, muscles, eye, hair, all of that stuff gets fixed, the physical fatigue from the prior day. After about 75 minutes, you come out of deep sleep and you go into a lighter stage of sleep and then a dream. It's called rapid eye movement. So you end deep sleep cycle with a dream. So it's light sleep, light sleep, dream. That's an hour and a half. Now, what happens in a dream is the brain disconnects, you go into a state of paralysis, so you don't act out your dreams. but your eyes are darting back and forward and you're still breathing, but you're in paralysis. So when someone's dreaming, it's the opposite of deep sleep. Their body's not moving, but their eyes are darting back and forward. And what the brain is doing, it's archiving memories. It's dealing with mood, emotion, memory. It's kind of like a cleansing process going on. And then after that, that's when you'll wake up. So you'll hear noises outside at the 90-minute mark.
Okay.
And then you'll drift off back to sleep.
That's why sometimes you feel like you're hearing things in your dream that when you wake up are happening, like an alarm or a cell phone ringing or...
That's it. So, you'll hear a baby crying in a dream, but you won't in deep sleep if you're a new parent. Or, you might hear a raccoon outside the house, but it'll be only during, that's why people use white noise machines to increase the ambient noise levels so you don't wake during those dreams.
Okay.
It's a sleep strategy I picked up. So what happens is you go light sleep, deep sleep, light sleep, dream, and then you drift off into another sleep cycle for another 90 minutes, and then another, and then another. So a good night's sleep is just blocks of sleep cycles put together, because the deep sleep fixes the body, fatigue, the REM sleep fixes the brain. So when you're dreaming, you can power a 10-watt light bulb from the electricity generated by your brain.
Really?
You're wide awake, buzzing with electricity, right? All the electricity between the neurons, right? It's an incredible thing to watch.
Yeah.
And that's why you can wake from a dream really easily, like you did at the 3-hour mark, and felt fine. But that 1 hour nap you had on a Saturday where you felt worse, 1 hour takes you into the bottom of deep sleep, where you're dead to the world. And when you wake up from deep sleep, you wake up with sleep inertia, groggy, tired, moody, lethargic, I hate my job, I can't do this anymore. But if you'd have let that nap go an hour and a half, you'd have woken up. So napping is short 20 to 30 minute power naps before you drift off into deep sleep, or an hour and a half. So a good night's sleep to get all the different brainwave patterns and all of the restoration is 1.5, 3 hours, 4.5, 6 hours, 7.5, 9 hours.
Sure.
So I started by saying 7 hours is worse than 6, because 6 is 4 sleep cycles, 7 is 4.5. And you cannot get a half sleep cycle because you'll always be in deep sleep and wake up feeling worse. And that's why if you woke before your alarm clock this morning, that's why you're waking at the end of a sleep cycle.
And okay.
But because we think sleep is linear, as in more is better, we hit the snooze button and we go back to another half hour or 40 minutes, and then we wake up feeling worse.
Definitely. I've definitely done that.
Yeah. So I say set your alarm clock for multiples of an hour and a half. If you got a 10-hour break and you've got an 8-hour sleep window, aim for 7.5 or 5 sleep cycles if you're a trucker.
Yeah.
So, so there's a whole class I run on how to set your alarm clock, because we do it wrong. We do it all back to front. We do it based on when we've got to get to work, not on how many sleep cycles we can fit in the sleep opportunity window, because it's the quality of sleep that comes from the complete cycles that is the key, not quantity.
That's a big takeaway. That's a big takeaway even for myself, because I'm totally guilty of trying to set my alarm as late as I can to know that I can get up and still make it to work, but also to give myself a chance for a snooze button. And I often do end up feeling like more tired, even though I think I'm getting a little extra sleep.
Well, so that's the myth, right? And Brenton, here's why it's such a big deal. That when you wake from deep sleep, that sleep inertia is exponentially worse for a tired trucker. If you're already sleep deprived, that sleep inertia, waking from deep sleep after that 1 hour, is severe. It's much worse the more tired you are. So that's why it's a grind for truckers who never quite get it right. They're always looking through, life through a camera that's slightly out of focus.
Sure.
And all it takes, I'll guarantee you, if you do this tonight, you will wake up feeling different and better. And that's why the sleep classes are so successful, because you only got to do this for one night and suddenly you realize what you've been doing wrong most of your life, but you feel much better. And then that decision to do that then opens up the gate to better decisions about food, better food choices. Because a lot of people talk to truckers about diet and nutrition. It's impossible if you're sleep deprived. you cannot make good decisions without good sleep, because you're always going to default to, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, and you grab the slice of pizza at the Pilot or something like that. You comfort food, and you're always putting off. Without the sleep, we really struggle to make good decisions. And the sleep the quality comes from those cycles. That's probably the most profound thing I found, is that when you listen to truckers on the radio, and I still drive, like I've still got a CDL and I still drive, I've got a Class 8 Peterbilt truck. I always hear drivers say, I'm going to pull up and have an hour. And I say, and I'll get on the CV and say, no, don't. Like, make it an hour and a half, and you'll feel much better. And I said, well, I haven't got an hour and a half. Well, 20 to 30 minutes.
I'm guilty of making those bad decisions when I'm tired too, when it comes to eating and firing up some pizza rolls at 11 p.m. at night rather than grabbing a carrot or something like that. I don't want to miss the
roller coaster. Yeah, go on.
I don't want to miss the chance to point out that if guys should go on YouTube and look up your name and look up the Grumpy Pete. So you still have a truck that you bring around to shows.
Yeah, I've got a show truck. I bought an old one, a Peterbilt, and I've been rebuilding it over the last decade. It's now a show truck. It looks nothing like the fleet truck in 2003. It's got a 359 dash and twin sticks and TVs and lounge and all sorts of stuff. This is the culmination of 35 years of dreaming about what I would do one day, what I would design and build if I had the chance.
It's a beautiful truck. If you go on, guys, go on YouTube and search up Dean Croke, so DeanCroke, and there's a short video that Cat Scales put together that kind of shows you the insides and outsides of Dean's beautiful black Peterbilt 379, right, Dean?
Yeah, it's a 379 extended hood, 270 wheelbase. It's called the Grumpy Pete because my boys said it's a grumpy looking Peterbilt one day, and that stuck.
I think it looks great. Hey, I want to thank you for being here. What would you say here as we kind of head towards wrapping up? What should guys be thinking about in terms of, okay, I know I'm going to be stopping. I'm going to try this sleep cycle thing, but I have a hard time because I don't fall asleep in that 20 to 30 minutes. It takes me an hour or 2 hours to fall asleep.
Yeah. So first thing is understand that caffeine has a half-life of 6 hours. So the sleep gate won't open if you've got too much caffeine in your system. And that could come from sodas or coffee. So I have a general rule, no coffee after 3 p.m. or 3 a.m. is my rule.
What about Monster energy drinks? Can I drink those all day?
Nope, absolutely not. Especially the high sugar ones, absolutely not. So again, the good quality sleep will allow you to make better decisions. But half-life of 6 hours is important because if you're trying to go to sleep at 9 and you had a big coffee at dinner at 6 p.m., sleep gate's not going to open. You're going to be awake for much longer. But let's say it takes you, 30 minutes to fall asleep, and you've got a opportunity to get 6 hours or 4 sleep cycles. Set your alarm clock for 6.5 hours.
Okay.
Half hour to fall asleep, 6 hours, 4 cycles. And that sort of sleep latency is the test of how long it takes you to fall asleep. Most people are going to fall asleep in an instant because they're so sleep deprived. But if it takes you, the average human takes 20 minutes to fall asleep, well-rested human being. So I just add on what you think you need to fall asleep to the multiples of an hour and a half. And you'll know when you wake up how many minutes you were off. And then you can recalibrate it the next night.
Do you exercise after I park or laying in my bunk watching Netflix on my tablet or my phone? Is that stuff going to affect my ability to fall asleep?
Yeah, absolutely, because you can't do too much exercise because it overheats the body and, it sort of stimulates you too much. Same with light. So one of the things the brain needs to go to sleep when the sun goes down is light's gone and your brain is thinking it's dark and we're going to go to sleep. But if you're going to light your brain up with light from a TV, it's going to delay sleep. So I would say, read a book, not watch TV. It would be my advice. Unless it's habitual and you can put on a movie and fall asleep within a minute. Right. I'm guilty of that.
Because you're not really watching, right?
No, it's a habit. Yeah. So it's okay if it's habit forming, but not if you're going to sit there and watch 2 movies in a row and suddenly think, heck, I've only got an hour left on my 10.
Right.
That's not healthy. So remember, light is a stimulant to your eyes, and light is what our brain uses to determine light and dark and the sleep-wake cycle.
So to get good sleep, we want to start to slow our night down a little bit, try to get into a darker place, make sure that we haven't had that caffeine, that coffee, that stuff stimulating us for quite a while, and then build in that habit. Try to get into the habit of the same time every day, and then we're shooting for 1.5-hour sleep cycles. Yep.
And the key to this is, I know a lot of drivers are going to say, yeah, but I need that cup of coffee because I'm so tired. You've got to break the cycle. And it's tough for the first couple of days because you've got to break the cycle, because the first night's sleep is going to enable you to back off the coffee the next day. Right? Because you're going to feel more rested. So you got to be committed to break the cycle. Otherwise, it's a roller coaster. It's hard to get off it when you're sleep deprived because you're always self-medicating.
Yeah.
To compensate for the sleep deprivation.
And that takes us back to why it's so important that our families at home understand, maybe I do get on a really great sleep cycle when I'm out on the road and I don't need the coffee and the caffeine, but now I go home and the honey-do list never ends and I'm trying to make every social event and I just jack up my whole sleep cycle. Now I'm leaving the house in debt again and I have to take days to get back into my sleep cycle. So making sure our families are on board.
Communicate with everybody around you what your sleep needs are. Don't be ashamed of this. Sleep is a thing we do. I think we've got to do a better job of making it core to everything we do in business. Because with the right sleep, all sorts of good things happen.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're kind of chasing your tail all the time in business when people are tired.
That, and you're driving a really big piece of equipment down the road with a lot of risk involved and the chance for a life-altering moment for you or someone else because of an accident, because of falling asleep behind the wheel. Yep. That's not a risk that any of us want to take. So this topic is very important. Dean, thanks for taking almost an hour to talk with me here today. I really appreciate it. I think it's going to be a big benefit to our drivers and something that we can keep the conversation going. Is there a way for guys to reach you or find out more about this or take a class? Or
if you're connected with me on social media at the Grumpy Pete, you can DM me there. The best way to contact us at DAT is askiq@dat.com. It's our email website for all general questions, askiq@dat.com. I'm on all the social media platforms. You can connect with me on LinkedIn is a great way. I'm pretty, on LinkedIn all the time. That's a good way to connect. And we should do this again, Brenton, because I'm sure this will generate a lot of discussion and questions. And we should do a follow-up podcast to answer all the questions. If you keep a list of them, let's go through them one by one once we get them all in.
That is a great idea. So if you guys listening today do have questions, you can reach out to us here at Autumn. Our email address is social@autumntransport.com. You can send them in to us on any social media platform that you're following us. And that's a great idea. I'd love to connect with you again, Dean, and do some follow-up. Thanks a lot for being on here. Appreciate it. We'll talk soon, Dean.
Yep, stay safe, everyone.
Thank you guys for listening today to the Autumn Transport podcast. I hope that topic was informative and interesting for you guys. I know I learned a lot. Like Dean said, we'd love to do a follow-up. So if you have any questions, please send them in to us. Please share this episode with your friends and family. I think this is an important topic for many more people to listen to and learn about. And connect with us on social. We'd love to have you follow along. Thanks, guys. Drive safe.